Hello and welcome back. So as we can see, we have actually finished letting that gun. We finished off the model, but there are a few outstanding things in the squads. There's a few models here I want to show you some outstanding things on. Obviously there's hair, so I'm going to show you to paint hair on that one. Faces, show you to paint faces on that one. And the whips. So we've got a whip there that we're going to show you how to paint the whip. So that's what's left to do in the squads. There's a few more guys over here, but these are the same things I'm going to be doing on them. So we're going to go through hair, faces and whips. And then the squad will be done and we're going to do basing. So without further ado, I'm going to put him aside for now. And we shall start with the hair, start with the easiest one. So the first colour you're going to want is Incubi Darkness. And again, give it a good check. So what you're going to do, you're just literally going to get a nice small brush. Detail will be fine, or fine detail, whichever. And we're just going to go over the plumes, hair, wherever you want it, with Incubi Darkness. Like so, that easy. And thin your paints, 2 coats if it gets too thin is fine. I want to move the paint along the model, so I'm going to finish off the other models that need that doing, and we'll be back with you in the next stage. Okay, so once the Incubi Darkness is dry, we're going to go over that with Kabalite Green. You just want to cover the Incubi Darkness, same way again, washing down your brush a little bit. Like so. Leaving a tiny bit of the Incubi Darkness showing through the end there. And that's that stage there. So we're waiting for that to dry. We'll make a start on the flesh. So for these guys, for the Calabites, I'm not going to have them as pale as the witches and so on. So a little bit more flesh colour in these guys. So I'm actually going to start with Cadian Fleshtone. Again, make sure your pot's been shaken up, and you've got some water to water down the colour. A fairly small brush for this, because you want to get into all the detail, and you don't want to go over anything at this point that you've already painted. And once you've done that, you need to wait for the Fleshtone to dry before applying the wash. Like so. So the Fleshtone is now on that model, into all the recesses. And we'll get a Reikland flesh wash on that next. So once they're dry, I'll be back for the next stage. Okay, so now they're dry, we're going to ink the flesh in Reikland Fleshshade and the plumes hair in non-oil. Non-oil, none, I keep saying that. Nuln oil. And again, we're just going to stick some on. Follow the lines of the hair, lines of the plume, just brush it on. Darkens it down a bit for the final highlight. Simple as that. And then with the flesh, again, you don't want to put too much on the face, but you certainly want to get it into those recesses. And a nice coating all around to make sure there's nothing patchy on there. So those two need to dry now. While we're waiting for them to dry, we can start on the whip. And the first colour you're going to want on the whip is also Incubi Darkness. So like always, water it down, make sure it flows over the model, and just follow the whatever angle of the whip it is. Some whips are like this one, some whips are curvy. You just want to cover the whole whip part, leaving the handle black like the guns that you've already painted. Okay, and then that needs to dry along with everything else. So we'll wait for those three to dry and I'll be back with the next stages. Okay, so now the null oil is dry. We're going to finish off the plumes using Sybarite Green. And just going to get the detail brush for this. I'm just going to use the side of the detail brush, and I'm just going to cover because the hair has got a lot of lines on it, so we're going to follow those lines with the side of the brush just to highlight it. We don't want to put too much of this on, just enough to give it a highlight, like so. And then I'm going to need to get the Cadian Fleshtone again, and this time we're going to cover the face, the top of the head, just to lighten that up again. I want to leave the recesses with the wash in. It's important to get the cheekbones, to bring them out as well. Okay, so that leaves us with that for now. So we need to let that dry. Okay, so the whip, the next colour we're going to use on the whip is actually Sotek Green. So we're going to just cover the whip in the Sotek Green for now. Again, you want to apply this in layers, thin layers. And you want to make sure that you water down the paint. Okay. And that leaves us with this sort of colour going on. So we need to wait for all of them to dry, and then we shall move on to the next phase. Okay, so with the flesh, the next colour is Kislev flesh. We're going to go ahead and cover most of that Cadian Fleshtone in Kislev flesh, just leaving a little bit showing. This is going to be the base sort of colour for the flesh. Quite pale, but not as pale as the witches will be, because I want them to look a bit different. So you want to pick out as much of that detail as you can. Nose, ears, parts of the mouth, cheekbones. Again, keep as much control over the paint as you can by keeping it thin. If you have to do 2 coats, that's fine. I think we'll do another coat on that. So once that's dried, I should do another coat. As far as the whip's concerned, what you want next is Temple Guard blue. What we're going to do, we're going to paint some at the end and some near the handle, leaving the middle a bit darker. And that can start a colour gradient for the next paint. Okay, so that's what I meant by colour gradient. It's quite extreme, that one. It looks a bit extreme at the moment, but by the time we've finished that'll be toned down a little bit. So we need to leave those to completely dry now. So while they dry, I shall continue painting the other models that need some work done, and I shall see you in a moment. Okay, so the next colour we're going to need is Pallad Witch Flesh, and we're going to need that for both of these. So we're going to need it for the face, and we're also going to need it for the whip. So on the face, we're just doing some highlights. We want to focus on the nose area, the ears, eyebrows, cheekbones, anywhere which is significantly raised. I'm going to pick up more light. If you stick to the tops of areas as well, because those are the areas that pick up light. Any frown lines, stuff like that, just to bring them out a little bit. Okay. You want to use your finest brush imaginable as well, just to get a good finish on this. Okay, so you're going for something like that basically. The camera will focus on it, just to give the face some definition. Take your time. If you need to go over areas twice as well, that's fine. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with that. It stands out on the battlefield. Now on the whip, what we're going to want to do is paint the end in Pallad Witch Flesh, and also near the handle, anywhere where you've got like the Temple Guard blue and a lot of it. Now what I did in the meantime as well, I also painted some Incubi Darkness back onto the centre, just there in the centre. Painted a little line of Incubi Darkness to darken that down. So you want to put some Pallad Witch Flesh on the tip like that. And you're going to do sort of a lighting effect around it. To get that, you basically do a line off, followed by smaller lines coming off it. And if you do that over the whole sort of area, not going on to the Incubi Darkness or the Sotek Green, just where the Temple Guard blue is, like so. So I'm going to do that on both sides of this, and then I'll be back with you once I've done that to show you what I've done. Okay, so just to give you another look at the face, I'd also painted some Pallad Witch Flesh on the top of his head, make it quite shiny. Another example where you can't really see the face that well, I'm just painting some Pallad Witch Flesh over the Kislev though, just to give that some highlights. So the final highlight on the faces will come in the form of white Sky. And literally this is just the finest detail brush you've got, the smallest amount of paint imaginable, so I'll wipe a bit off. And all you're going to do is literally go over the tips of the ears, just to give it a final highlight, the very edge of the cheekbones, tip of the nose, sort of like a line just above the eyebrows. And just a little bit on the cheekbones, literally the smallest amount imaginable. And there we go, that's the face done. And on this guy, all we're going to do, we're going to paint lines coming from his eyebrows. Again, wiping off as much of the paint as possible. I'm doing like a V shape up very carefully. And then just on the tips of his cheeks, because his ears aren't showing, so that's it for him. And there he is. Just to give you a couple of examples. The whips, that's the whip I was showing you before. You see sort of the lightning sort of like a lightning, maybe like a tentacle almost effect going on there. I'll just show you a different whip. On there, it's almost like a barbed sort of lightning effect. It's done just by running the brush along and then bringing the little bits off using a fine detail brush. And then if it's too faint, you just go over it again, just to make it stand out a bit more. So the last thing we need to do with the whips is to give them a coating of Waywatcher Green, which is a glaze. So you don't want to put too much of it on, but it'll bring the whole thing together just to blend those colours in a bit better. So you need a detail brush, probably the best one for this. Find my detail brush, and literally you can take this straight from the pot and just go along the length of the whip all the way through the different colours, and on the other side. And that is literally it. That needs to dry now to give it this green glaze effect, glowy effect, and I'm blending those colours together. Same on this one. So it'll tone down that Pallad Witch flesh, make it a little less stark, and pulls it all together. And that is it. If you've got any other bits on the model like these skulls, they can either be done the same way as the bone armour, or you can paint them using Ushabti Bone and Screaming Skull. Whichever way you prefer. That one's been done using Ushabti Bone and Screaming Skull. Got plumes, same way as the hair. Little broken elder soul stones I've just painted in gold just to pick them out. And that is basically it. So all that's left to do now is do the basing. So we're going to go back to our original model. There he is. And in order to base, you either need to use a old brush, which has still got a pretty good tip on it, or if I just go and find it. Yep, there it is. It's the Games Workshop spreading tool for using textured paint, and we're going to use the textured Stirland Mud paint. I mean, when you paint your bases, you want to paint them however you want to paint them, basically. You can normally paint them to match whatever army you've already got, or whatever kind of board you've already got. And sometimes, most of my armies have actually got like city fight bases on, but for these dark elves and some of the other ones, I wanted a more standard looking muddy base. I just feel to do something a bit different, really. And it's the same as in the book as well, the Raiders of Camorra book. So that's a new pot of Stirland Mud. So basically what you want to do, you want to grab your brush or your nylon spreader. It's made of nylon, so the paint doesn't stick to it as much. If you didn't know, probably did. Probably teaching you how to suck eggs here. And all we're going to do, we're going to cover this base in this stuff. Get them all on there, like so. So there's a lot on there. That's great. You don't want to get much of this, if any of it, on the model, especially with elder models, because they're kind of clean looking. A lot of models you can get away with putting a little bit on to make it look like a bit of weathering, especially if you are going to weather them separately as well. So then you use a small end of the scraper, the spreader, just to push the textured paint into those recesses around the tabard. Try trying not to get too much on the feet. If you haven't filled that little dimple in the middle of the base, which all these round bases seem to have on them, it's a good opportunity to shove a bit of extra sand and stuff in there just to cover that up, like so. Sometimes when I do base, I green stuff the models to the base just to give the base a bit of extra texture. Move the green stuff up and down just to give it a bit of extra sort of like differentiation rather than just a flat base. But on these guys I've just stuck them together as they are. So there we go, that's it, that's your first layer. Stirland Mud. And I've missed a bit there. So you don't want to miss any bits, especially where you've got paint on the base. You want to cover them up as best you can. Make sure it's textured. Also be careful because you'll probably get the textured stuff on your fingers because you're holding the edge of the base. You don't want any of that on the miniature at all, so just be very, very careful to get rid of that before you touch the miniature again. But that's it, that's what you need to do. So I'm going to repeat that on all these. Then you need to let that dry, which will take some time because it's quite a bulky, wet object there. Yeah, that's a horrible description, but never mind. And sorry about that. Yeah, but it's quite clogged, so it's going to take longer to dry than paint. So probably going to leave that overnight and come back to it tomorrow. But I'm going to repeat that on all the models, and then they should all be ready at the same time. So I shall see you probably in the morning, probably when that's dry. Okay, so now it's dry. I've left that overnight. Next stage is to cover that in Fleshshade and make it really wet again. So use a fairly large brush for this. I'm just going to cover the base in Fleshshade, and you're going to want to leave that a good hour to dry out. So in the meantime you can be painting other models. That's why I would advise you to do this basing process in bulk, just because it saves time. And there we go, that's all you want on there. Just about that much, just to darken it down again, give it some depth. And now I'm going to repeat this on the other models, and I will be back with you when that is dry. Ooh, there we go, and when he stood up straight. Okay, so now the Agrax is dry, we're going to cover this in Ushabti Bone. So we're going to get a fairly large brush for this. Do a little bit of dry brushing. You can use a dry brush for this. I prefer to use just a large brush. And you want to get as small amount of the paint as possible onto the model to dry brush it. So looking something like that. And that's just a case of putting the brush across and making sure that textured paint picks up the paint off the brush, while not putting it on too heavy so that it goes into all the recesses. So once you've done that, you should end up with something similar to that, which should be fairly dry anyway, so you can move straight on to the next phase, which is Screaming Skull. Which is exactly the same thing again. Only with a slightly lighter colour. Okay, so I'm going to just put that, make sure there's a bit less coming on here this time. Just to highlight the highlight almost that was just put on. And it's that quick, that is done. So, once that is done, we need to do the edge of the base, and the edge of the base is going to be done in Rhinox hide, which is here, which is the base coat. And this is a dark base coat and it's going over black. You'll probably only need one coat, but if it's a bit patchy you can always go over it twice. And all you want to do is make sure you get your paint all the way around the edge of that base. That tidies it up from the dry brushing that's just been done. And then we'll leave that to dry. Once that's dry, we're going to get some of the grass. and some super glue, and then I'm just going to stick some of this on there. Like so. And you can put that on anywhere on the base. Go anywhere on the base, that. So that is the model finished. So I'm going to repeat this over all the models in the squad, and then I'll get back to you showing you the full squad finished. And there we go. There's a full squad of the Treeborn, and there's a full squad of the non-Treeborn. So while we've been videoing this, we've completed 2 full squads of guys. Hopefully you can see that we've used the same techniques across all of them. And all these techniques are in the Raiders of Camorra painting guide book, which if you've not got and you're interested in this this army at all, I would highly recommend it, because along with this there's a few more tips in there as well. But that is 2 squads there completed and ready to go. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If you want to see more painting guides, let me know. Any suggestions, please let me know. And please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we're available on Facebook and we're available on Twitter. So follow us on there if you wouldn't mind. But I've been Paul, and this is Pantheon of the Geeks, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Take care, bye.